run to the battle. Put our armor on, draw our swords. Let's run to the battle. Shout loud and glorify the Lord. Let's run to the battle. Put our armor on, draw our swords. Let's run to the battle. Shout loud and glorify the Lord. Come on, run. Let's run. Let's run. Run.
When you teach children how to communicate, then you give them a toolbox that helps them manage relationships both now and in the future. What I'd like to do is share with you some specific ideas about how you can develop this idea of communication with your children. Often this takes place through conflict. So let's jump into conflict first of all, because conflict is made of two things. On the one hand, we have problems and differences, and on the other hand, we have emotions. Problems and differences plus emotions make conflict. So we want to take those apart and use those independently. If we're working with the problems and the differences, we want to teach our children how to solve problems better. I would suggest that sometimes children have problems and they call on dad or mom to solve the problem, and a parent just jumps in to do that. And I would suggest that it would be more helpful sometimes to transfer responsibility back to the child or to the children and let them solve the problems themselves. Let me give you an idea of how you might do that in this area. One is that you might have children who are fighting over a toy. Put the toy on the table and you say, okay, we got these two chairs we're going to put facing each other. I'd like you guys to sit in the chairs and talk about it, and when you have a solution, then you can play with the toy. And they just sit there thinking they're in trouble. They don't do anything. So you might say, well, here, let me tell you, son. You could say, I have an idea. And he says, I have an idea, I should get the toy. And you say, okay, that sounds like a good idea. What do you think about that, daughter? And she says, I don't like that idea. Well, what's your idea? I should get the toy. Well, it looks like you guys have ideas. Why don't you come up with an idea that you could both work with? When we do that, then, we're teaching our children how to problem solve, how to communicate, how to persuade, how to negotiate, how to compromise, all of these things that children need in order to be able to communicate better. Children need to solve problems, and sometimes parents feel the tension inside, so they solve the problem for the child. But if we teach children how to solve problems for themselves, they can be much more powerful in that area. So a lot of problem-solving skills we can help children develop, because here's the reality. People who don't have good problem-solving skills use anger to solve problems. No wonder we have anger here. We don't have good solutions here to solve the problem. So anger then becomes this challenge. And so we're working on anger. But one interesting thing that happens is when children develop better skills for problem-solving and communication, then their anger challenges often decrease. We may have to jump into some solutions for dealing with anger, but that's the reality here. Let's take conflict apart and use the two different parts of it to help our children grow in this area of communication. Now, communication isn't just about conflict. It's not just about words. Let me give you a suggestion about communicating deeply emotionally with your child. I would encourage you to try this exercise to emotionally connect and then celebrate it. Here's what I mean by that. When you emotionally connect with a child, what that means is that you find something that they like to do or you like to do together, or you play a game. Some kids like to wrestle, other kids like to tell jokes. Sometimes it's just snuggling and giving a hug. Sometimes working on a project together. And you know that the child is responding because their countenance has changed. Their eyes light up. You've emotionally connected. And when you have, then you want to make this statement. A statement has the words we and together in it. We sure enjoy wrestling around together, don't we? Or when we work together, we sure get a lot done quickly. The reason we're doing that is because many children believe that the parent is on the opposite side of the net, that we're opposed to each other and we're fighting back and forth. But when you make that statement, you're bringing us both on the same page. Children need that, and you're able to communicate this closeness that we want as we're working with our children. Let me share with you 5 levels of communication, because these 5 levels of communication will help you move down the process so that you can understand how to help our children grasp this all the more. It's important for kids to know how to use their words, and I'm going to share with you some ideas about how to do that. In Ephesians chapter 4, verse 29, it says, "Don't let any unwholesome words come out of your mouth, but only what is profitable for building others up." Well, those words are so important for our children to grasp in the way they communicate. And as we take children through these different levels, we're going to get deeper into the heart. So you could practice this with your child, and you can teach your child how to communicate more effectively with these 5 levels. The first one is greeting. Greeting is so important in a family. When you get up in the morning, you greet and welcome, good morning. You should do the same thing in the evening when you come home from work or your child comes home from school. You say, "Hey, how's it going?" They say, "Fine." You say, "Great." And sometimes they just say fine. That's okay. This is greeting. That's all it is. We greet each other because greeting is like oil in the machinery of relationships. And sometimes what happens when you greet, a child will say, not too good. They're not feeling all that great. And that gives you opportunity to move down to the next level. The second level is facts and information. This is what helps us stay connected because we know what's going on in each other's lives. So we share facts about what our class load is, or I might share with a child, we have a dentist appointment this Friday, don't forget that. Or did you know it's going to be raining this weekend? I don't know if we'll be able to have the soccer game. All of that has to do with facts and information. And some parents say, well, my child doesn't share facts and information, he just grunts. Well, maybe what we need to do is ask more specific questions. When you say, how was school today? Your child says, fine. That might not be the best question for your child who doesn't communicate with open-ended questions. Maybe you need to use a more direct question, like, when you go in the morning to sit down, do you have a assigned seat, or do you get to pick where you sit? Or when lunch is over, how do you know lunch is over, and how much time do you get before you get from lunch to your class, and how do you know which class to go to? When we're asking very specific questions of our children, then they're answering those questions and we're getting more facts out of them. So think in terms of not just open-ended questions, because sometimes children need a little more prodding in order to get what communication going with them. So that's the second level, and that is all above the heart. The next level goes down into the heart, and facts and information often provide the basis upon which we can go deeper. The third level is opinions and judgments. Now, some children have a lot of opinions and judgments, sometimes opinions of what you should do or what you shouldn't do, or how life is and how life is unfair and so on. And sometimes parents enter into arguments about children's opinions and judgments. Remember, Jesus taught us that it's out of the heart that the mouth speaks. And so when a child is sharing opinions and judgments, now we're down in the heart. And in that heart, we have this ability for children to grasp some very important things in their lives. They're sharing. And so we want to know what's happening, and we may dialogue. We might ask more questions to flesh them out a bit before we correct them or change their thinking. Opinions and judgment are a very important place. So when your child starts sharing opinions, don't shut them down too quickly, because now you're in the heart of a child. The next level is also very important. It's the part about emotions. And when we get to emotions, we're getting pretty deep in this ability to connect with someone on an emotional level. So when we ask a question like, well, how do you feel about that? Your soccer game is going to get canceled, it looks like, because of the rain this weekend. We're asking a question that draws us more into these feelings. But it's not just about asking our children questions. Sometimes it's modeling it. I'm feeling kind of anxious about this appointment I have coming up this Friday. Might be a way that we share with children our emotions, and we're helping them to see what emotional modeling looks like. So as we do that, we help our kids grasp this very important lesson that they need about emotions and connectedness, and now we're communicating on a much deeper level. Of course, these levels of communication aren't just for children. You can improve a marriage this way or build a greater relationship with friends. You can even use these ideas at work. But as we focus in on our children, we want to have the communication skills that will help us grow in this area. The deepest level of communication is spiritual interaction, where we bring God into the conversation. It's sometimes when we're praying. When you pray with your son or your daughter, great things can happen in that relationship. There's a closeness that develops. When you worship together, or when you spend time in God's Word and share those things together, all of that has to do with a spiritual interaction. When we enter into that kind of conversation, we're developing a real intimacy with that other person. That's why it's so important for us to work on all these levels of communication, because they do progress and we can get down to those deeper levels. You know, there are a lot of people that say, I feel closer to my church family than I do to my physical family. Why is that? It's often because down deep inside, they've got these things going on in their hearts and they're connecting with someone else and they feel closer to them. You see, when we work with our children to help them learn how to communicate, when we give them the tools for communicate and we practice in our home, which means sometimes turning off the electronics so that we can get into some real good communication, then great things happen, and we prepare our children with the tools they'll need to navigate the emotional challenges they have now and also in the future.
Run, run to the battle. Put your armor on, draw your sword. Let's run, run to the battle.